We'll start. Yeah.
Happy morning to folks from India. It is Chennai, Bangalore, Salem, and other cities. And a happy evening to folks from Canada and the US. Pleased to welcome you all to this Spin Chennai's research presentation session with Mr. Krishnan. Krishnan is not a new name to Spin Chennai. He has been a speaker. In fact, he was the first speaker at the SpyCon 2016 International Conference 3 years ago. And he has been working with us in FICCI and various other forums as part of Itigasa Research and Digital. So we are in times where VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is prevalent. But the good news is that it is trending down from its peak. And today, with vaccines coming around, overall the comfort level has vastly improved from where we were even few months ago. The digital transformation has been really accelerated by COVID-19. I think if we can call out one good thing that has happened from COVID-19, I think that will be digital transformation. Here too, industries which were not serious about digital, including edutech. So we have professors like Dr. Nitya around who will vouch for the fact that there are, if you prior to COVID, if you ask teachers and professors to really come online and do a session for the students, nobody would have done that. Everybody preferred only the classroom session. But today, most of the sessions are happening over Zoom and Google Meet and whatnot. So industry after industry, whether it is the edutech, manufacturing, retail, food delivery, whatever be it, e-commerce, everything has turned to e-commerce and online. Digital has become a very, very important theme, not only in the lives of the millennials and the corporate people, but also even old people. Today they have started transacting online, they are ordering food online. So much of adoption has started setting in. So before Krishnan gets to share his research, very, very interesting research on the way, I have the pleasant duty of doing three things. Brief intro about Spin Chennai to those who are new, set the context for this session, and also introduce Krishnan. About Spin Chennai, a little short of 25 years old as a knowledge ecosystem, Spin Chennai is affiliated to Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, as well as ISACA, the global body. Our vision is to build a world-class knowledge ecosystem, which is very compelling, highly relevant, and value-adding to the people as well as the industry, distinctively futuristic and passionately co-creative. We have a 3,000 plus member knowledge ecosystem comprising of CXOs, board members, senior leaders, SVPs, VPs, HR, marketing and sales professionals, quality and delivery professionals, domain people from BFSI, telecom, automotive, manufacturing, senior consultants, mentors, academia, and various other institutions. Some of the international gurus who have been associated with Spin Chennai include Dr. Watts Humphrey, who was associated with us for nearly 10 years. Incidentally, Dr. Watts Humphrey, for those who are not aware of Dr. Watts Humphrey, he is hailed as the father of software quality. So we have instituted, in his honor, we have instituted the Watts Humphrey Award, which happens every year with the huge participation from the industry to bring out the best case studies on various topics, including Agile, Six Sigma, high maturity processes, design thinking, and various other dimensions. Incidentally, Dr. Watts Humphrey died in 2010, slightly untimely death. We lost a global guru at that time. Since then, we have been anchoring this Dr. Watts Humphrey Awards, except for a couple of years. Otherwise, it has been continuous. We have had several international gurus associated with Spin Chennai, including Louis Trigger from Israel, who is a theory of constraints expert. He was a direct disciple of Eli Goldratt, the author of Theory of Constraints. We had Dr. Bill Curtis from US. Bill Curtis has contributed to the development of the world famous CMMI model, People CMM. Both these models, he was a key contributor sitting in SCI. So Bill Curtis was here 2 years back. He handed over the Watts Humphrey Awards. He was the chief guest. Then we have Professor Manu Vora, one of the top management consultants from US. He has been at Spin Chennai. Mark Johnson, who is a management thought leader and co-founder of InnoSight from US, who is also he's a co-founder of InnoSight along with Dr. Clayton Christensen, the Harvard leading Harvard professor, who is now no more. So Mark Johnson had given a fantastic session to Spin Chennai folks. Dr. Jeff Sutherland, who is a co-founder of Scrum, right? He himself was there last year 2 times with the Spin Chennai. One as a chief guest at the Watts Humphrey Awards. Another time he gave a 1 hour, 1.5 hour session to Spin Chennai folks. Mr. Michael Krigsman, author of the CXO Talk, with more than 1,000 appearances. He knows leading CXOs from US, like more than 1,000 people he has interviewed, CXOs. Barry Craigs, ex-Microsoft CTO, was here with the Spin Chennai a few months ago. Then last month, January 31st or 30th, Steve Beres, one of the partners of Bain, he was with us. He is very focused on agile and quality. Steve Beres gave a fantastic presentation to Spin Chennai. They've all shared expertise apart from several leading lights from India over the years. Have been part of Spin Chennai. Coming to today's session, Spin Chennai, being a thought leadership focused organization, has a keen focus on science and technology, and has a key initiative on identifying, amplifying, and driving new trends. We are always at the leading edge in terms of driving the new trends, even if they are the new trends always start as a pale, not so interesting development, but people who can spot that will definitely start amplifying it. That is what Spin Chennai plays an important role in ensuring that we identify those trends, upcoming trends, amplify them, and drive them for evangelization. So in the new year, Spin Chennai launched Knowledge Vantage initiative, which helps connect with new knowledge, new tools and techniques, thought leadership, research and insights, so many different dimensions, and also brings, for example, complementary books, and various other information to people who register and attend. So we are able to reinvent ourselves. Our objective is to ensure that our members are continuously relevant by reinventing themselves to face this fast-changing world. Knowledge is the only tool which can give us all competitive advantage by keeping us relevant and ready for facing the future. From an agri economy to an industrial economy, we have moved on to the knowledge economy. Today, the world is a global village due to advancement in science and technology. Nations have started advancing their agenda, and those leading in science and technology get the innovation premium, while others will play a catch-up game. If you take AI research, filing of patents, the early movers really pave the path, and others try to follow through. The pace at which China is filing IP, researching on new technologies, particularly AI, machine learning, and automating the entire country is mind-boggling. And we have a lot of catch-up to do. Each of us have a responsibility to further research and innovation in the country. India has moved from 84th rank to 48th in the Global Innovation Index over the last 5-6 years. But we have a long way to go if we have to get our slot in the top 5 in the world in terms of Global Innovation Index. So India's investment in space research in the 1960s and 70s is really helping us today with we launching satellites of so many countries. Our research on vaccines, our research on chemicals and pharma, biotech, statins, our research on brain function, they're all catching the attention of the world. There are so many disruptions happening due to digital and other new innovative business models. Companies who are leaders in science and technology, who have IP, they become overnight success. So talk about Zoom. Zoom, the share price jumped 5-6 times in the last year itself. So India also on its part, displayed a lot of innovation potential during COVID-19. See, there is a saying, necessity is the mother of invention, and scarcity is the father of invention. So we faced scarcity of ventilators, and we innovated low-cost ventilators and several other new devices. And so many new startups were born. And today, India is the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, next only to China and US. So still, we have a long way to go. So coming to the study, the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India and IIT Madras Alumni Association as the knowledge partner, they have conducted this study with the objective to gather insights towards formulating the science and technology policy for India. The inputs from this were directly used in the policy formulation for the policy which was released in 2020. The scientific advisor, Dr. Vijay Raghavan, uh, was uh, was the recipient of this research done by Krishnan and team, and he has taken this research has not only confirmed many of the findings which they had, uh, but also came out with a lot of new stuff. So Krishnan will be covering some of those. So coming to Itihasa Research and Digital, Krishnan's organization, they've been focusing on bringing cutting edge research and novelties, and have done reports on brain research, impact of digital technologies to the IT industry and in the post-COVID world. There are so many research in their website you go to. So coming to the speaker, Mr. Krishnan, he is the co-founder and president of Itigasa Research and Digital. He brings over 2 decades of experience in digital consulting and technology commercialization. He spent 13 years with Infosys, where he was a member of the Infosys Labs Management Council. He has managed a global transformation program in partnership with Microsoft and collaborated with the research and innovation clusters from the US, Netherlands, and Australia. He founded a water startup in India. He has a Bachelor of Technology degree from IIT Madras and a management degree from XLRI Jamshedpur. So it is going to be a very, very interesting session. Uh, so please keep, so one of the requests from Krishnan is that while the presentation is going on, you are free to unmute and ask your questions, convey your opinions. So he wants this to be as interactive as possible, so that collectively we are able to get a 360-degree view of what is happening with respect to science and technology. So the knowledge is not only limited to this research, but also your opinions, your views, perspectives are also invited. It is a very open forum. We want more dialogues than a monologue. So I encourage each and every one of you at this point to unmute. Please unmute and put your hands together to welcome Mr. Krishnan to address the Spin Chennai community. Over to you, Krishnan.
Thanks, Rajaram. Wonderful to get reconnected with you and Spin Chennai again. Of course, it's very inspiring to hear about all the wonderful people who have been involved with Spin Chennai and Spin Chennai forums and sharing their knowledge. I'm delighted to be part of today's session. Now, this was a survey that we had discussed with the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India when this year, as part of our IIT Madras Alumni Association, we were conducting our annual event called Sangam 2020. And the theme was driving the new normal. And we said, of course, when we do this event, it'll be useful to have a quantified view of what this new normal means, right? What are people talking about with respect to new normal? Are they positive, and so on? And mind you, we have come for at least 5 months, 6 months since this 5 months after the survey has been done. I think we are a lot more confident. But this was at the time of the peak of this, and we wanted to get a perspective. And of course, IIT Madras Alumni Association, just as a as a way of quick introduction, we are also a 50-plus-year-old organization. We have membership of about 50,000 of our alumni across the world, and our motto, mission, in fact, has been driven along the three topics of reconnect, engage, and impact. Of course, reconnect, engage is a lot to do with our own alumni. The impact motto of our association is where we want to do activities which impact the society at large. And so this public attitude to science and technology survey that we undertook, this is for the first time. Incidentally, this is for the first time in India also where such a study is being undertaken. The Office of PSA and DST, etc., have been doing a number of other mechanisms to seek inputs for the science and technology policy. So that is, of course, without doubt. But this kind of a broad-based public attitude survey was for the first time. And so as we undertook this survey, we also benchmarked with some of the efforts that have happened across the world. So we looked at what happened in the UK, what happened in the US, to a certain extent in Australia, and based on that, we have conducted this study. So anyway, that's the broad background. Let me dive in. The way I will do this is this whole thing is kind of will be presented to you in 4 sections, and so I'll present 2-3 slides, and then we will sort of open it up and have a discussion, get your thoughts around this. Okay. So here is just a sort of a quick view in terms of the demographics. So we had a very large number, about nearly 1,600 people, respondents, from 400 cities across India and around the world. And of course, predominantly, 57% alumni, but we had a very healthy representation of non-alumni people responding. 78% of the respondents, of course, were people who who had high degrees in science. So in some ways, this was a very informed audience that was responding to us. Um, of course, a lot of males who responded, a wide variety in terms of, we were very fortunate that we got a good mixture in terms of age of respondents. And so the less than 21 would be the students who responded to this survey. And we also had a healthy mixture of, employment, different kinds, including very few homemakers who responded to this survey. Of course, I think there are improvements for the future version. So by the way, we have announced that we will undertake this on an annual basis under the rubric of BPAS, Bharat Public Attitude to Science Survey. And we'll see how to take this forward going in the coming years. Okay, so first let's look at what did the public respond with respect to the new normal and the extent of digitization. So if you look at this, about 82% of the respondents were, very or fairly confident that we will sort of drive a new normal in the next few years. And if you look at the group which was the most confident, it was really in the age group of 41 to 60 that were the most confident. So there is a thing, we have used what is called the net score to identify this. So net score is essentially the sum of the positive minus the sum of the negative. And so that gives us a flavor of, so that's what we have used to evaluate across groups and so on. So this net group for this age group, 41 to 60, are the people who are clearly about 10 percentage points, or more positive in terms of reaching this new normal. And as expectedly, the people who had full-time employment, they were clearly more confident than the collective group in terms of reaching this new normal. Now, then we asked them, hey, this digitization that we are seeing in our lives, how permanent is that? And if you see, once again, about 80% have said this is permanent. And once again, in some ways, I mean, somewhat surprising, the age group of 41 to 60 and 61 plus actually believe the highest that this is true. I mean, clearly a sort of a 6-point difference over the overall group. So the middle-aged to elder people seem to believe this digitization is permanent. That was an interesting study. But there was a nuance when it came to the digitization. While this was about overall digitization, we also went into a little bit of depth in terms of digitization at work and digitization of education. And so if you look at it, I think one message that came out very strongly is that remote working is here to stay. 92% of the people said remote working models is there to stay for in case of work. About 69% said that it is here to stay in the case of education. What also came out very strongly was this hybrid model. That means it is going to be remote plus some combination of on-site, that is on-premise kind of models. So that also came out very strongly as a preferred model where it will of how it is going to come. But there were very clear distinctions in terms of how people perceived the future of work and future of education. So if you see if you look at the number of people who believed we will return, we will go back to normal as before, that was about 3.5 times, 3.5x more in the case of future of education as compared to future of work. And clearly the younger audience, in fact, the net score of the age groups 21, under 21 and 21 to 40, about this, the fact that this digitization will be permanent, right? So that age group, in fact, felt it's about half of the people above 40. So the younger people, clearly, what this means. Maybe it is a reflection of what they desire. That they don't want this to be permanent, and that's why they are saying they want to go back to colleges and in physical setups. So it is very fascinating. I think everybody agrees that that remote working is here to stay. Hybrid model is here to stay. That will emerge. But the extent to which this will happen at work and education seems to be different. So let me stop here. Let's get some perspectives from the audience. I know some of you are in the education sector, so maybe you have a view on what you are seeing, at your place, whether people are looking forward to coming back. What's the mood? Are people feeling positive? Why don't we just take a few opinions from around the table?
Can I, sir?
Yes, please. You identify yourself and then you can.
Yeah, I'm Nitya from Sona College of Technology. So I'm really very excited and interested about this research concept. In fact, to share with you, I too did a small research on students' perception on digital online classrooms.
Very good.
So I need to register 2 points. One is I completely agree the current slide which is on the screen. People are looking forward for remote. True. Many a time what we thought as impossible was made possible during this COVID. So I have a very high regard for this lockdown period. And this hybrid model is really a boon for the working community. So as and when they require and when it is mandatory, they can go on board. Otherwise, they can just play with their own, at home work.
Right.
And this is one thing I completely agree. And one other point which I want to share, it is not actually differing. Maybe I have a different perception. The point which you mentioned, like 41 to 60, they were much. They think that the rapid growth in digital trend would be permanent.
Yes.
I have a small gap. Maybe is this because only after COVID or only during this pandemic, this age group were made to get into digital platform. Previously, that was not a need for them.
Yes.
So maybe for this reason, they think this is a too big a paradigm shift. Otherwise, the younger generation who were there always on the online access and online benefits, maybe this can be a reason why this group is seeing it as a bigger shift.
Possible. Yes, very much possible.
Yeah, and I need to be very happy to understand that the group is way more confident, probably because they have seen all the ups and downs so far in their life, and that is really amazing and influencing. That the
Right.
age group 41 to 60 is much confident because this may not be nothing for them for their hurdles that they have seen before. So all the 3 points which we have discussed, this is what I perceived.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
My pleasure.
Anyone else? Any thoughts, any perspectives from your workplace? Of course, it was very inspiring for us to see this level of optimism even 6 months back, or even 4 months back. Okay, if there are no further thoughts, we'll proceed. But I will encourage you to sort of put your thinking caps on. Otherwise this session will be, I mean, I'm happy to share these things, but of course, it'll make it livelier once there are more discussions. Okay, but we'll proceed. Right. So in our survey, then we asked questions about priorities for India. What are the priorities at an individual level? Right. So we asked these questions. And now this one was right. So this is the question about what are the top priorities for India. What should India focus on? And you look at the top four, really about sort of economic growth, jobs, healthcare, equitable growth, right? A lot of people, I think this pandemic has at least revealed to the kind of demographic that we reached, that there is a lot of inequality in this society, and that has become very transparent, very evident, right? Like we are all living in our cocoons, but this pandemic sort of exposed us even more. Some of us, of course, are very much aware, but I'm just saying, as a collective conscience, we became very, very much aware. It came out upfront. And this digital divide, in fact, has become even worse. Some of the people, like this online education, etc. I mean, of course, sitting in cities, itself, there were challenges with respect to availability of devices, right? In every household, it's not like every household will have 2-3 monitors or iPads and stuff. So even in cities, there were challenges, but especially in rural places, many of the students went back, and they had a lot of challenges in getting access, not only for digital, but for basic things. So I think this awareness has come out. So it was very positive that the audience was talking about that in the top 3 education skill development. I think this was this is nothing surprising, but and the government also has responded, for example, with a phenomenal increase in the budgets for health and medical care in this budget. So that was on the top priorities. We also asked in terms of technology priority. What should India focus on? And once again, here it was very surprising, I would say, that of course information technology and AI being the top was not surprising given given the audience, etc. But this survey also revealed the next two, that is agriculture technology and environmental technology, as becoming extremely important. Should become priorities for the country. Of course, there are other things that people have identified, but I'm just saying the top 3. If you look at it, I think this was very heartening to see things like IT, AI, ag tech, water, energy, air, those kinds of things. So that was another very interesting perspective we got through the survey. And finally, from a personal development perspective. Now, here you see the top 2, and mental well-being in the top 2, I think was a sort of a wake-up call. I think this pandemic has forced all of us into a completely new environment. Of course, it has been stressful for all of us, but particularly so for some of us. And some people have not been able to cope with it, and so this mental well-being, suddenly the uptake of meditation, through online mechanisms and yoga and things like that, physical and mental well-being, I think has shot up. Importance has gone up. Awareness has gone up. So professional skill upgradation, even more than networking. Professional networking, in fact, was the lowest of the priorities. Skill upgradation and mental well-being became the sort of the top things there. And I would say, of course, and there was some very interesting thing with respect to age. So those aged less than 40 were the people who placed greater emphasis on mental well-being than those aged greater than 41. So the younger people were placing a lot more emphasis on mental well-being than the elder people. That was one interesting thing. The second thing, perhaps not surprising, is those aged greater than 61 placed the greatest emphasis on giving back to society. I mean, which was unexpected lines, but the first one was very, very interesting thing for us. So let me stop here. Any thoughts, perspectives from this group? What has been your experience? What do you think about priorities for India?
Yeah, Krishnan, can you go back to those 3 slides? Yeah, it is. I think the job losses that happened during the pandemic, the migration of the migrant workers,
Yes.
And many such aspects, and also loss of loved ones. Even many of them lost somebody, the family.
Yes.
COVID.
Yes.
Have all had a deepening impact.
Yes.
Which is totally unexpected, and that was what was forced on people. Yeah, I think that is clearly reflecting in everybody's attitude to life, personal disposition. It has
right.
caused if we see the data, it is really reflecting the fact that people have to develop their skills.
Right.
People have to ensure that they take care of their health, and people have to help others. I think these 3 are coming out so strikingly.
Correct. That's correct.
From all age groups.
What about mental? Anybody has an opinion on this mental well-being? Anybody? Any experiences in terms of any groups that which have which are seeking or which have found some solutions? So for example, when we also did a study with the IT industry, and this one in particular came out. So a lot of companies were proactively taking steps to sort of keep the mental mood of the teams in high spirits. So they were doing various kinds of online activities and so on. So even on the IT companies saw this need, and they were trying to figure out some interesting things. Any experiences?
Yeah, Krishnan, I would add a point of regarding mental well-being. I mean, while that was given earlier, I mean, prior to lockdown, now the necessity for taking the mental well-being into consideration has become so evident, starting from the managements, the organizations, up to the least of the, member of the organization. They have started to think about. I mean, now we have come to a scenario where we should be mindful about the wellness of the family, personal wellness in terms of mental, physical, everything has come very, very exuberantly here.
Correct.
And moreover, I mean, our Indian society has been a major labor and workforce to the entire global community, right? While being said that, now from being a workaholic mode, people have started to think about themselves, their families. So, I mean,
Correct.
there is no doubt the first point has a slightly increase of 1% like upgrading personal skill or professional skills, because with a whole economy and the whole community have moved towards a digital, completely digital, or a more like to
Correct.
major extent to be digital.
That's
The
correct.
second part that have come, like mental well-being being said. So now the members or the students who are part of this group, they're not going to choose organization just only for the pay scale or for the title, or I mean for the so and so tangible benefits. They're also going to look at the intangible benefits that they are going to acquire from the company.
Correct.
So it's very evident out of this research.
Correct.
Really.
No, and I think you make a valid point in the sense that not that mental well-being was not important before, but I think it has come into our collective conscience much more strongly now. In fact, Professor Subra Suresh, from the president of NTU, he in fact said, this is perhaps the one of the world's largest social experiment, where you have locked several hundreds of millions of people, put them in under lockdown for a certain period of time. It has never happened before. Maybe certain very small section of society has happened, but the entire world in lockdown for 3 months, 6 months, it has never happened before. So he felt, as a social scientist, this is like this is a phenomenal experiment, as in that has happened. Nobody wanted it. It has happened, and so what can we do to study? Same way on professional skill upgradation, I must say, for example, IIT Madras. I mean, not in response to COVID, it has been in the works, but during this time, IIT Madras launched the world's first online BSc degree, right? Which is phenomenal now. That is, as you could be working anywhere, you could be studying as well. And of course, now the new NEP policy, education policy, is allowing for this, that you could take up another degree while you're studying, one online degree as well. So it was phenomenal, and I think IIT Madras received over 20,000 sort of responses. They have finally selected about 8,500 people for the first course on online BSc. This is on programming and I think data science. Of course, it is a hybrid model there also. While a lot of this education is going to be online, they are supporting it with physical programs periodically, as well as all the testing is going to be done on premise, physical. I mean, not inside IIT Madras, but in various locations across the country. So I think all those, professional skill, hybrid, a lot of this, I think this was a good illustration.
Yeah. And to add one more point,
yes,
regarding the priority has given for professional skill upgradation. While we have been very monotonous in the way of curriculum or the education has been over the periods, that's a historic this thing. Yeah. Now the need for being agile in the way the curriculum is designed is very, very evident here. So I mean, definitely, as you have submitted this report, it would have reached to the respective offices to make sure that there is a need for a regular upgradation of the education system, which will help our community, our peoples, our citizens to get highly empowered with their skills. Because skilling and de-skilling has always been process of, I mean, any society and citizen.
Correct. Sure. That's correct.
Also, Krishnan, the study, did it probe on startup entrepreneurship? There is
yes.
Okay.
Actually, it's a good question that you asked. So we did. I didn't present this this data here, but I would say that so we had asked one question about what they think the future of the startups will be in the new normal, and whether we'll see more startups or less startups. And I think we had about 80% of the respondents, net score being that we will see more startups in the new normal. So I think that belief that startups will continue to play an important role, that remained. We had also asked some questions in terms of key challenges, and I think they picked up 2 points. So the two things which came out on the top were lack of availability of risk capital at the early stage. I think people saw some decrease in that. The amount of money that is available in a late stage. Once you are an established company, in fact, I think it has gone up, if anything. We have continued to attract so much talent. So many more unicorns have emerged because of people's willingness to invest money at a later stage. But the availability of risk capital at the early stage was picked up as the topmost challenge. Of
Yeah,
course, the second one was policy and regulations. So I don't know, Rajaram. I mean, you are with the Welltech incubators. I don't know what your sense is.
yeah. See, this is a good opportunity to convey that government has come out with Nidhi Prayas, Meiti, and various schemes. In fact, right from school onwards, Atal incubation centers are being set up.
Yes.
In terms of funding, for example, idea to prototype, right? So students or entrepreneurs come with ideas, and they want to create prototypes, proof of concepts and prototypes, and then to products, minimum viable product. So we have funding up to 10 lakhs grant available, so that you can go and experiment, right? So in fact, we are looking for good ideas to fund. Very often, people come up with Me Too kind of ideas, or ideas which are not fully formed, which are not well directed. There are, at least from the government side, I can say that they are constantly increasing the funding with whatever limited resources they have, through the incubators, through accelerators. They are trying to bring more and more funds. In addition, there are also CSR schemes from corporates. They have made corporates CSR also eligible to fund the incubators, and ideas. So that is another relaxation they have done. Meiti has got entrepreneurship in residence, with a monthly stipend of about 30,000 rupees. You could be part of an incubator and researching an idea, and at the end of 1 year, somehow come out with a strong idea, right? So like this, there are various schemes at the Tamil Nadu Entrepreneurship Development and Innovation Institute, EDII. Every month, there is a session called Innovation Voucher Program. So you submit ideas and you go and present in front of a committee. You can get 3 to 4 lakh grants for developing your ideas. So what is happening is there is not a lot of awareness, because see, the students and the students predominantly think that campus is the only option. I sit for campus placement, and which one is coming, and that has been the real thinking, and they fail to see that, hey, carrying forward your ideas, carrying forward making, instead of job seekers, instead of you can become a job creator. That perception is slowly coming into place.
Right.
And the lot of college management and support to entrepreneurship is also important dimension here. If the college is not supporting, they don't have an incubator, then the students don't have an option. But there are many colleges now where the setting up a technology business incubator has become a real mandate, a differentiator for them. That is where it is leading to. And that is going to be a very, very healthy sign, considering the fact that so many new ideas and innovators come out of school dropouts, as well as, if you take Stanford, that has been the real creator of so many big companies. So that ecosystem from operating out of universities, and that is catching up, and more funds are coming from the central government as well as the state government.
Right.
And it is a good sign.
Right. Okay, so that was so that those two sections were related to the new normal and how the public was responding to it. The next two sections, we will focus on the public's attitude to science and technology, and in particular artificial intelligence, because we had gone into a little bit more depth on AI. So that's what I will present in the next two sections. So we had asked a question, to people when we said, when you think of the word science, when you hear the word science, what comes to your mind? And not surprisingly, the physical sciences, that has come out on top. Physics, chemistry, those kinds of physical sciences, followed by these applied sciences, engineering, medicine, and so on. Formal sciences, social life sciences, social sciences, unfortunately, come way down. And so I think, this is, of course, this is maybe because of the audience, where 78% had a knowledge of higher degree in science. Maybe it is reflected of that. But also I think there is a very clear need. So for example, there's another project that IIT Madras Alumni Association is undertaking, where we are actually putting together a book where we have invited now some of the leading scientists and engineers in India onto our platform, and we are actually coming out with a book on India 2030 through the eyes of scientists and engineers. So in fact, yesterday we had a discussion, and the discussion was how applied mathematics is not, the applied mathematics, or the mathematics department is not participating in, even in the leading IITs, in coming out with the new startups, new ideas, with new innovations. They are not involved. I think the focus is a lot more on theorems and proving it and so on, and less on applied mathematics to solve real world problems, for instance. That's the reality that exists today. Today, when biology and computational biology has become one of the most profound sciences, which is transforming the world, right? People have talked about it in terms of the technologies which are in the second half of the chessboard. I don't know whether you when you do the, I don't know whether many people know this story. People would have read the story about that the Indian who invented chess, and when the king said, "What do you want?" He said, "Give me one rice, and keep sort of multiplying by 2 as you go along." So the moment it went beyond 32, that is when the amplification, right, the kicker effect is seen. So the second half of the chessboard for technologies, biology has reached that stage, and it's kind of sad to see them, these things languishing when people don't think of them. Forget about social sciences; they come way below. And so I think there is an opportunity here to reiterate STEAM and so on. This was another interesting thing that we asked. We had a lot of questions in terms of where people get their information, how will they share, etc. So this one, 89% said they share online, they share the online information that they receive. But what we found was factors like attractively presented scientific information or presenting it to a friend's network, those things facilitate more online sharing. And so I think that we had suggested this to the government. I think that there should be greater forums for exchange of information, must be more attractively packaged and so on. And in fact, the latest STI policy does talk about there's an entire section. I don't know whether you have read, but I will strongly encourage you to read online. They had put it up for public consultation. That period is over now, but you can go look at the STI policy. There is an entire section on communicating science, and so this was important. This is a very interesting slide. We had asked in terms of their hopes, concerns, trust level about science and so on, right? So very clearly, we had on whether science and technology makes our life better, 88% net score. Science and technology making a direct contribution to the economic growth, 95% said yes, it makes sense. Then this was very interesting. We had asked whether scientists and technologists should discuss more about their social and ethical implications of their work. And so we had 89% responding saying, net positive score, net score, saying that they should discuss more. So, and this is especially true in the context of now the discussions about AI and ethics. We had also asked this question about science and technology careers for, whether it is suitable for women. We had phrased it as not suitable. And so 89% had disagreed with that statement. So this is a good point. However, the data on the ground in India is not encouraging. It is of course, it's changing, but right now, as it stands, although we have a very high percentage of women entering science, by the time the leadership level comes, the numbers have dramatically dropped down. By the time the young women go for PhDs and so on, those numbers have come down. And so I think there's a lot of improvement that needs to happen there. And this one, of course, was the one where it was extremely divided about whether science and religion are compatible. We had asked whether science and religion is compatible and not in conflict. Now, I know this in some forums could be a touchy topic, but of course, as scientists and engineers, we don't need to be so wary of this particular question. This is very important because, especially now in the context of vaccinations, I think in certain cases there are differences between how science views it and religion views it, and I think there is a need for greater dialogue between these two communities to sort of build that trust level in science. I think those were some points on perception to science. And then, of course, we asked them in terms of when you think of technology, emerging technology, what comes to your mind? And AI, not surprisingly, was top of the charts. In fact, the numbers were like 6 times, 6. It was more than 6 of the next. It is more than the sum of the next 6 technologies together. So AI is on the top priority of Indians, I guess, for that matter, across the world. We also asked them questions in terms of benefits versus risks with respect to technologies. And this is very, very interesting. So, yes. So, for example, things like renewable energy, electric vehicle, they all score very high in terms of the net scores, right? In terms of benefits versus risks. Whereas look at this on the right-hand side, gene editing, synthetic virology, cryptocurrency, these all are scoring negative. That means they believe, the audience believes that the risks outweigh the benefits for these kinds of technologies. AI is somewhere in the middle, you could say. And age-wise analysis was also very, very interesting. So the people who are less than 21 and 21 to 40, they actually believe that gene editing, cryptocurrency, they are all positive. The benefits outweigh risks. So the younger people are okay with these, with these technologies. In fact, the younger ones, once again, like the 21 to 40, they believe, like something like synthetic virology is also okay. And the people above 60, 61, they feel they are actually they are the people who feel the strongest about AI. The benefits outweigh risks for AI. Strongest is actually coming from the respondents in the age group of 61 plus. So those were some very interesting age-wise analysis that we were able to see on the risk versus benefit. Now, I did ask Professor Vijay Raghavan, this question about risk versus benefits. And so what he had to say, he had a very interesting perspective. So he said a lot of studies have shown it is not just about their perception about risk versus benefit, but also when they get benefits, the time it takes for them to perceive the benefits. And so, for example, so he was giving the example of something like smoking. You get instant benefit, and so you don't associate a level of risk with, with that. Although it may well be, it is well proven that the smoking is injurious to you. Whereas vaccination, on the other hand, you don't see the benefit right away. In fact, the benefit is seen because you don't see the disease anymore. It's only in the absence of the disease that the benefit is known. And so for technologies like that, where the gratification comes in later, sometimes the adoption is slower. I think those were some interesting perspectives he shared. So let me stop here. Any thoughts, perspectives, on the branch of science, the concerns, hopes? Any?
Yeah, I have a small concern. Just you can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe Indian perception on the choice of degree or choice of education goes on two bifurcation. One we call it as arts, and other we call it as science. So actually speaking, the Western countries, they take it as liberal arts, social sciences, and truly like music, dance, that alone they take it as arts. So this traditional thinking of arts and science may have given a repercussion in that, that previous slide, I guess.
Yes, you are right.
Our perception is, totally was, now only recently I could see a lot of colleges in Coimbatore all taking up as liberal arts than saying arts. Actually speaking, social science, life science, and then applied science. This should be the bifurcation technically. Maybe our Indian system of thinking and the practice would have made a change here. That is what I presume.
Possible. That's correct.
Yes. And the show's shocking is the minus 89% of people, percentage that science and technology careers are not suitable for women. I really didn't get granted to this.
No. So let me put it this way.
Yes.
Because we framed the question, we framed the question as science and technology careers are not suitable for women. So 89% have disagreed with that statement.
Okay.
That means they are suitable. I mean, we could argue that who are these 11% who still believe that science and technology careers are not suitable for women, right?
True.
But don't go with this negative because of the way it was framed.
No, I'm seeing it as a scope of having something, either hidden or something we need to know. I'm not taking it negatively. So if there is a different perception among the public, we need to understand what made them to think this way. That is why, making me curious.
No. So, okay,
Well,
let me put it this. Yeah.
I think this particular question, they have framed it as a negative question.
Yes. That's why it is coming as negative.
That's why
When we could have framed it as, science and technology careers are suitable for women, then you will get 89% positive.
Yes.
It would have come as 89%.
It's just a representation. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they asked a negative question, there are so many people who have responded negatively to that.
Okay.
Meaning, they are saying 89% have really are saying that science and technology careers are for women. That is what.
Yeah, it's not 89%. This is net score, but this is 89. That is a positive score minus negative scores is 89%.
Okay.
Okay.
But that was not a question exactly used in the questionnaire, like the one on the top of the chart, hopes, concerns.
No. The things on the right hand side is the question.
Okay.
Science and technology careers are not suitable for women.
People are defending. Okay.
People are defending it.
Yes.
See, on the whole, science and technology will make our lives better. 88% net score agree with this. Science and technology makes a direct contribution to economic growth of country. 95% net agree with it.
I got it.
Whereas science and technology careers are not suitable for a woman. 89% net disagree with this statement.
Yes. So in that way, they're positive about.
They are positive.
Yes.
I mean, we can argue who are these 11%, right? Who still in this age and day believe that science and technology is not suitable.
Maybe they would have even thought so deeply, like too much of pharmaceutical or lab oriented, all that stuff.
Maybe we don't know. I mean, we are not drilled into that.
That is
thing.
The perception may differ.
Perception.
Yes. And this one, I think gene editing, synthetic virology, or something too new to our Indian research domain. Maybe that's because people are
yes.
Okay.
It is possible. That could be one explanation. That because these are new technologies in themselves, so the people's perception also is not so positive about it. If they get more used to it, they'll become more.
True.
That is one explanation. There are also other this thing like the age wise also we are able to see. So the younger people seem to think it benefits outweigh, but not as high as renewable energy, for instance.
On the first one, renewable energy, I think people have started thinking about renewable energy more and more because of the cost of petrol and diesel today. They have been driven.
Right.
But one thing to add up here, Krishnan, the last three things like gene editing, synthetic virology, and cryptocurrency, as they are very new to adoption in this current, decade.
That's
or
correct.
This starting 2021.
Yes.
You also said the age group who had given positive scores are towards it, which means there is a dynamic change in the way the generation had started to think.
Right, that's correct. That is correct.
Because renewable energy, electrical vehicles these items have been in the past decade too, which is say like from 2011 to 2020. So they were proven, they were there, those are all seen. However, on last three items, I think this could, who knows, by the towards the mid of or towards the end of this decade, they could also, jump to a level of say other technologies that are put up here.
Possible, and very much so. And that's why this kind of a study you have to keep doing year on year, or at least once in 2 years, for us to get a sense of how the nation's perception is changing. So, and let me just present this last thing, and then we'll take up, which is on AI, right? I mean, I would think a lot of us in this crowd are also interested in artificial intelligence and so on. So we went into a little bit more depth on AI, and so we asked, how comfortable are you with respect to the usage of AI? And so if you look at it, The top two, manufacturing, automation and robots in factories. That came out actually the net scored highest. They were very comfortable there. Language translation, there's the ability to translate across multiple languages, which is very relevant for India, right? So those two are sort of come out on top. And of course, at the bottom end, you have things like web personalization, autonomous vehicle. These are the things they are not comfortable with. If you look at the net scores, okay. Now there are of course differences in the age group, of this number. So the people who are less than, they sort of 21 to 40, they are the least comfortable with respect to the use of AI in facial recognition. That is relatively speaking, right? Among the 21 to 40, this is the one they are the least comfortable with, facial recognition. The less than 21 are least comfortable with, any guesses? Least comfortable with the less than 21. Armed forces. Okay, they are not comfortable like usage of drones, etc. The respondents 21 to, sorry?
Krishna, actually, it should be the other way. Youngsters, if you take Singapore or Israel, they are drafted into the army.
No, maybe, but I'm saying this is largely Indians. So the Indian youth is not comfortable with usage of AI in drones, in armed forces. The 21 to 40, they are the most comfortable with automated application processing. So, loan processing, HR application processing, autonomous vehicles, they are the most comfortable. And 61 plus are most comfortable with the usage in armed forces and facial recognition. So that was an interesting take on the age-wise analysis. Now, this was another interesting thing that we discovered. So we asked this question slightly differently, right? We, instead of asking comfort level with AI, we said, how comfortable are you with sharing your personal data for AI applications? I mean, after all, you have to share data. So it was like the same question, but asked differently to see how people react to this. So for the same type of applications like healthcare, facial recognition, targeted advertising, or automated application processing, for the same kind of applications, people were less comfortable when they said they are willing to share personal data than, so if you take healthcare, 48% net score said they are okay with sharing, with AI in healthcare, but only 30% net score when you say you have to share your personal data for healthcare. Same with facial recognition, 52% are okay with facial recognition AI, but only 35% are okay with sharing their data for that application. It is even more stark when it comes to targeted advertising. The net score is 8%, right? So it is still positive. But when you say, do you want to share data, it becomes minus 34%. So nobody wants to share, but they still want to enjoy the benefits of targeted advertising. So I think this discomfort level with sharing data, I think that is evident. And that is why there is so much talk about, the personal data protection, PDP bill, and now the regulation around non-personal data, etc. Right? All these things. I think that is why there is so much discussion around these topics. Then we also ask them questions in terms of jobs. And so here, once again, if you look at this, the 42% said, look, it basically depends on, it'll depend on the industry, whether the jobs will get cut or not. It depends. Of course, that's the safest thing to say. I mean, it's true as well. 28% did say more jobs will get created, and 27% said more jobs will get eliminated, net jobs. So to that extent, it is still a slightly positive view. But when you look at it from the age point of view, it's very stark. So the people who are more than 40 are definitely more optimistic compared to people who are less than 40. So the youngsters, they are probably about 2 to 3 times more positive. The people who are aged more than 40 about the fact that more jobs will get created. So this was one, and keep this in mind. So the youngsters are a little diffident about whether AI will create jobs. In fact, they feel it will net lose jobs. Then we also asked this question about whether AI intelligence will overtake human intelligence. Now, overall, 63% felt that humans will always be more positive than AI systems. Okay, that's the view. And but the respondents less than 40 are actually 3 times less confident than those greater than 40 that human intelligence will not be overtaken by AI. So there is some sense of fear that seems to exist, and we were not able to find out the reason why. We can see from the results that the youngsters are a little diffident about AI, although they are adopting it. All that is there, but still, when it comes to whether AI will overtake human intelligence, whether AI will destroy jobs, the youngsters were a little diffident, and those were the kind of sort of perspectives. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this last section of AI, if any of you have an opinion.
I think with respect to individual health, in this slide, healthcare, like automated diagnosis of diseases,
right,
recommendations,
right.
One would imagine the percentage should to be like 70-80% positive. I am surprised that it is only 30%.
No, healthcare overall, the score was only 48. Net score is 48. That means the people who are positive minus the people who are negative.
No, I am talking about the next one, the other one.
No, that is sharing data. I am saying
sharing data. See, healthcare, if it is going to give me automated diagnosis,
right,
I should be ready to share my individual data. Diagnostics. Why would I hold it?
Correct. But this is where there is a discomfort with respect to sharing of personal data.
I think this is not about not having trust in AI. This is about more the people who are administering it not having trust in them. They will open up the data, they will share it with somebody else.
Maybe.
Right?
Maybe.
So the trust in AI is very high, whereas the trust in the fact that once I give it the data, people may use it in multiple ways.
Maybe that could be one explanation, and we have to discover. We have to dig deeper. Of course, we didn't go into that level of depth. We're just finding at the highest level. But yeah, that could be one explanation.
The awareness about the need for sharing the data to IoT or AI related applications could also be a factor for a low score here.
Could be. See, one thing is very clear, right? That is when we looked at things like for the same application, when people said, AI is applicable for healthcare, AI is applicable for some other topic. They are very okay with that. But the moment you say, hey, you have to share data, that means they are not aware. Possibly they are not aware that if you need data to sort of make that. It's not. I mean, maybe it's not in their conscience, right? So they are okay with this thing, but suddenly you tell them, hey, you have to share your data to make that AI work. They are then pushing back. No. My data I'm not willing to give, but you please make that AI system work. Means that AI system will never work fine if your data is not shared. It's not likely to be representative. So yeah, the awareness is also an issue.
Yeah, I have a point to add.
Hmm.
Generally, in our contest, there was no informed consent in collection of data. Like,
Correct.
To be very frank, we know when we are going to an ophthalmologist, he will take our data for his research, whether it's
Right.
MP or M2 whatsoever.
Right.
Actually speaking, we should have been informed, and we should also be ready to give the consent. The ethics of research is very, what to say, it is not regulated by a body properly here.
Correct.
Anything on social science research, they simply go with because that's not on a personal and they're not affecting their privacy.
Right.
So on one side, the obsession on the privacy disturbs the people to give the data. On the other side, the irregulated ethics of research also creates a ruptures this process.
That's right.
Because this we have seen in many of the case studies. Whereas
Correct.
in other countries, you can't even take one small questionnaire to a person who is stepping into supermarket without an informed consent.
That's true.
And the second important thing is the importance of the research. There, they pay the respondent $5 or £5, whatsoever they pay. So they understand the need of their information,
Right.
which is not happening in Indian context. So
Right.
I see this as a very biggest, lacuna for us, that people are not, allowing themselves or not positive coming forward to share their data.
Hmm.
So it becomes a data theft at the end of the day.
Right.
So that is one reason which I feel
Correct.
and I come across.
What are the views on jobs and AI? Where does this group fall?
More jobs.
You think AI will create more jobs or will kill more jobs?
I think it will create more jobs because the area of implementation of AI is huge now. People generally on automation and manufacturing industry thinking that reducing the man size using automated working system, they think they will eat up the man job. But I'm looking in a different way. We will be reaching a higher platform where impossible becomes possible nowadays. So in that front, we may have more jobs. That is what I personally feel.
True,
But,
and I think people who have
That
spent time with IT
huh.
concur with that view because they have seen this happen in the past, right? This was the same thing that was argued when computers came into existence. They said it will take away jobs, and suddenly such a big industry has opened up. Sorry, Rajaram, you were saying something.
Yeah. See, what will happen is AI will destroy more jobs than create jobs. However, the jobs that it will create will be so specialized jobs. That is, people who are experts in AI, who can process, who have knowledge on the algorithms, who have deep knowledge on machine learning. So, to the extent that only those jobs will become their jobs will be high-paying jobs. So they won't be normal jobs in the sense they won't be, if the normal guy is getting X, those AI jobs will be paying 4X, 5X, right? So only such specialized jobs will get created, and normal coding or normal jobs will get destroyed.
Well, that is one view. That is
Yeah.
one view. However, I had the opportunity to speak to Mr. N. Chandrasekharan, chairman of Tata Sons. So he has written his one book called Bridgetal. right? So he argues that in India, there is a new type of AI that will become prevalent, which is a combination of people plus machine. And so in that book, they have given a lot of examples of new types of roles, where people collect data and they put information inside. And there are a number of companies like Next Wealth, Dr. Sridhar Mitta. He was a pioneer of the engineering services for IT industry with Wipro. So he started this company called New Wealth. They are creating new kinds of jobs in rural India, right? Chittoor, some the smaller towns and this thing, where the entry is for like a lot of the thing is for data entry to AI systems. So maybe there are new kinds of roles. It doesn't have to necessarily be, it's definitely more skill is required, but it doesn't have to be the most sophisticated. No, I'm just giving a counterpoint, Rajana. There is no right or wrong. I'm just giving some counterpoints to your suggestion. Who knows? Maybe new kinds of jobs will get created. We didn't know.
Correct. But those will not be many, primarily because even in the data entry side, today the OCR, ICR, the technology is improving so vastly that accuracy, whether it is handprint, machine print today, 99.95%, you can read, AI systems can read very efficiently without any human intervention. Only on handprint, you may have to do some first recognition and then some editing, right? Quality checks.
Sure.
So technology is evolving so rapidly that the mundane, repetitive, rule-based items will all get eliminated. Whether it is in accounting, whether it is data entry or these kind of stuff, will be the first ones to get eliminated. So they may be using, for data entry, and these are all very small number of jobs, very, very temporary kind of, for some particular purpose, but not as a dominant, long-lasting ones.
Sure, that is one view. Okay, good. Anybody else?
Senthil? I was just trying to. I would join hands with Rajaraman in saying the specialized and skill. Which would say like this is a very, very artistic or this is skill-based works. They cannot be replaced by AI. To whatever we have explored till date. Who knows? The AI could evolve much more in a later part of the, years too. So for now, the monotonous tasks like data entry or anything related to even coding can also be, easily acquired by AI. That's what I see. So
GPT-3. I think people have started experimenting with that. The GPT-3 engine to even generate code.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Similarly, and I would also like to see the connection of you bringing in the human intelligence versus artificial intelligence, wherein the humans we were intelligent, and after started to relying more on business rules and computers, our intelligence had started to deprive to some extent. I won't say to the whole on the human community, but to some extent. While you have your competitor chasing you with which is artificial intelligence, now it's time that we take the intelligence to a different level, that the human intelligence cannot be defeated by artificial intelligence, and both will exist together, and it will create jobs for the the younger generation who is coming.
Right. Okay, so that is what I had. In fact, let me sort of finish with this. You can this is I'm happy to share this this deck with you, Rajaram, you can share it with with the team. There is a report here. People can download it. They can make use of this. I'm happy to do that. Anyway, thank you for your time. Of course, we had a few very, very active people. Hopefully the others listened in, and maybe the next time we can have an even more interactive session.
Yeah, it was a very, very interesting and insightful session. Maybe I will request Senthil to propose the vote of thanks.
Yeah, it's my honor and pleasure to share the vote of thanks to the entire group of people who have taken their time to be here. They have planned, they have enrolled, they have made their way to be here. And my thanks to Mr. Krishnan. I mean, your research was so extensive that it had its holistic approach. We could sense it. Like, I mean, the efforts that you have put in with the resources, with the knowledge, with everything, all your energy and everything. So we could just sit as your like say customers or your readers. We could get the sense of the whole research in say a short span of 90 minutes kind of stuff. So thanks, Krishnan, for taking us through the whole lot of research that you have done, and definitely I see a great transition is happening from the way the people have started to think prior to the lockdown or pandemic effects, and during the pandemic effects, because we haven't yet still come out of it completely. While things have started to become like new normal, we are there are some areas like there are some after effects, aftermaths. So you have I mean touch based on everything very gently and with the necessary impacts to all the areas, like starting from the perceptions of the people on science and technology, like how would human intelligence and artificial intelligence will touch on areas of education, areas of technology, jobs, the society, the medical field. So I mean, I would see this as a 360-degree assessment that you have done on the society, especially on Indian community, because India is a land which cannot be compared with any other nation, because it has we are I mean we say like we are we have unity in diversity, and definitely your research also covered diverse or diversified fields, and you brought in together with the unified research. So we really thank you for putting all your efforts together. And Rajaram sir, thank you for making Krishnan to be part of today's session, and really this was great. And special thanks to Nitya ma'am for taking your time. Your questions have always, been very thoughtful. We appreciate that for taking your time. You have been very illicit in making your questions. No matter like whether you agree with the findings or you disagree with the findings. So I mean, every coin has two sides to it. So definitely you have proved to it. So while all the men were saying on one side, definitely, I'm not racist by the way. Okay, so your views were definitely vital to the whole. The community who are formed here. And thanks team who all have joined on time. It was a really cherishing moment. The videos will be available over YouTube or from Spin Chennai. You could have your view, and you could share with your community also for them to get better knowledge about what is happening around, because the awareness is very critical during these times, so that the people can shape up their lives, their jobs, their households, their community, everything together. So my special thanks to everyone, and Krishnan for your taking your efforts to be here this morning in spite of your busy schedules and plans.
My pleasure, Senthil, and good day, everybody.
Thank you. Looking forward to meeting you all in the next session.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much.